James Skrmetta Show, recording on a Wednesday, January 31st, the last day in January. This month has seemed so long. I'm sure everyone's New Year's resolutions are already destroyed. I know mine are. It's an exciting time, though. January is an exciting time. It's a time to start new things. It's a time to try new things, have a new year. So hopefully everyone's doing that. I know this year has been exciting, or will be exciting for this channel and what we're doing and for the podcast, the videos, all that stuff. So I did a video slash podcast slash vodcast last week. If you haven't seen it, please check it out. If you go to my YouTube channel and just type in, or go to YouTube, type in James Skrmetta, and it'll pop up. That's a way to watch the vodcast. Or if you like podcast more, feel free to enjoy it that way. Guys, today's show, a lot of fun here. We're going to be talking about the Grammys, or I guess why the Grammys were a bust. We'll be talking about the XFL making a return. Vince McMahon, can it truly dethrone the NFL? Is the time right for the XFL? And we'll also talk about Max Kellerman's scorching hot take that truly shook the universe with Notre Dame's mascot being racist. So let's go ahead and get into it. It's kind of a slow news week. Kind of interesting. Sometimes it happens, It shouldn't happen. Really, it shouldn't be a slow news week. We had the Grammys on Sunday. We have the Super Bowl coming up this Sunday. So we have, Super Bowl week usually is good for some news. But this week, and we had the State of the Union on Tuesday night. But the news is relatively sparse. The Grammys offered literally nothing. The Grammys have offered nothing in news, nothing to watch. No one watched the Grammys. Everyone I talked to said, no, I didn't even know it was on. And I got to thinking, man, what happened to award shows? What happened to the days where award shows were the biggest thing on TV? I remember the MTV Movie Awards was one of my favorite days of the year because I loved it. Man. Award shows were great. They were a time to see your favorite celebrities who you watched all year or listened to all year or supported all year. Got a chance to watch them with other celebrities. And now it's not like that. And I got to thinking why. Why it could be like that. Why? What's changing? I think a lot's changing. And the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. When you think about celebrity, right? Think about Hollywood. Think about, and when I say Hollywood, I don't mean just actors and actresses. I mean big musicians, stuff like that. TV shows. So we're going to use Hollywood as an all-encompassing term for just what we ingest with pop culture, really. And a lot of celebrities, a lot of these people in Hollywood are in terrible light. They're in terrible kind of PR right now. Actors and actresses you can't trust. You don't know who's lying, who's backstabbing, who's philandering, who's not who they say they are. We've had our trust broken by people like Kevin Spacey, and I think people have taken a toll on that. People also ingest media very differently, right? So the Grammys' major award is Best Album, of course. When is the last time you listened to a full album? When is the last time you listened to a full album, track 1 to track 14, over the course of a day? Over the course of 2 days, 3 days? I can't tell you the last time I did. If I did, it was by accident. If I did, it was via Spotify. I may have heard Post Malone's entire Stoney album because of Spotify, but I don't think I've heard it, track 1, track 2, track 3, track 4. I didn't listen to it like that. I didn't go buy the album, put it in my car, listen the tracks, read the track book, the little inserted book that was in CDs. I didn't check the track names. I don't know the names of these songs. I may know certain songs that pop up on iTunes or pop up on YouTube or pop up on Spotify, but I don't listen to albums, right? So I think it's interesting that their biggest award of Best Album, who really knows? Yes, I've heard all those Bruno Mars songs, but I don't know the rest of the album, right? So it's interesting. Maybe it's a little dated. Maybe that model is a little dated. The Oscars is coming up, right? Let's look at Best Picture. This is in March now, so we're a little over a month away. Let me read you the Best Picture nominees. Let me know how many of these you have heard of or seen. Call Me By Your Name, Darkest Hour, Dunkirk, Get Out, Lady Bird, Phantom Thread, The Post, The Shape of Water, and 3 billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri. Now, I've seen none of these. I have heard of Dunkirk. I have heard of Get Out. And I have heard, or at least seen the commercials for 3 billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri. Why is this? How can Best Picture be movies that people haven't even heard of, much less seen? I don't even know if these were in theaters. I have no idea when Call Me By Your Name was in theaters. I have no idea when Lady Bird was in theaters. I have no clue. Why is that? I think it's because people just don't ingest how they used to. They don't go to movies. They watch Netflix. They don't go to the theater. They may rent a Redbox. They may watch YouTube. People watch YouTube probably as much as they watch movies nowadays. Who's the leading actor in Lady Bird? I don't know. I didn't even know the movie existed. So it's something to think about. Very, very interesting. One thing else I'll say about the Grammys. Bruno Mars won Song of the Year. Bruno Mars won everything. He won like 7 Grammys. The guy can sing, okay? The guy can sing and dance. All right? Let's ease up on the awards. He doesn't need 7 of them. If you go to an award show, right, and you win 7 of the awards, why did anyone else show up? But he won Song of the Year over Despacito, and which I think is an absolute shame. It's an absolute crying shame. My boy Justin Bieber, Daddy Yankee, and the other guy got totally clowned on. If you have a #1 song in a country that's not in the language of the country, you should immediately win every award. Immediately. If you write a New York Times best-selling book and the whole book's in Dutch, then you should win. If your song is so good that people don't care about the words, that they have no idea what you're saying, no clue what you're saying, absolutely no clue what you're saying, but they're like, you know what, I love this song, that's when you know you have a #1 hit. If this podcast was done exclusively in Greek and it reached #1 on iTunes, then I think, I would deserve some praise. Not Bruno Mars. Not Bruno Mars. Are you kidding me? But that was the Grammys. Very, 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 very sad. Next story here. So the XFL is returning. People may remember the XFL. It was in the early 2000s, like 2000, kind of early. And it was Vince McMahon of the WWE made a football league. And it was so over the top. It was so late 90s, early 2000s. It was full testosterone, full aggression, full violence, all that stuff. And, it was a clown fiesta. Players had their nicknames on their jerseys. You didn't have kickoffs. It was like watching The Replacements, but worse. They didn't have a kickoff. You had to run. 2 players ran at a ball, and whichever one got it first, their team got the ball first. It was in your face. It was just trying to capitalize on the edginess of that era. And eventually it folded, obviously. But the new XFL is coming out, and the new XFL is just football reimagined. It's football, but it's more of pure football. McMahon has stated that there will be no politics. Everyone will stand for the flag. 0 politics. No players will have criminal records. He's replacing referees, I believe, like off-duty police officers. There will be 8 teams. I'm trying to think of some of the other rules off the top of my head here. But it's football. No gimmicks. So he's removing the gimmicks and just giving you the game. The games will last about 2 hours. So it's a shorter game. It's a shorter season. I believe the entire season is like 12 weeks. I think it's a 10-week regular season and a 2-week playoff. There'll be 4 games in the playoffs, 2 semifinal games, and then their Super Bowl, right? So that's the new league. And people have asked me if I think that it can compete with the NFL. And I don't think they're trying to compete with the NFL. Not yet. It's impossible to, right? You only have 8 teams. So where you can pump out 4 games a week, the NFL can pump out 16 games a week. The NFL owns a part of the year. It owns a weekday or a weekend day. It took a day from the church. It bought a day of the week from Jesus. And Jesus said, all right, NFL, you can have the day. Okay, take Sunday. Take Sunday. So I don't think the XFL is going to try and compete with the NFL. Their season, I believe, is going to run January to January for 10 weeks on. So January, February, probably end in April, something like that. And obviously the NFL doesn't play that. I think that's smart. I think it's smart to not try and run it simultaneously. Many people thought they may run it during football season, but on a different day, like Wednesday, or even go head up on Thursday Night Football. I say no. I say push it away. I say keep it in its own little sector, and you can succeed. People love football. People will watch football. People want to watch football all the time, all year. And if you give them the game, if you give them the NFL game, right, the game they know, what I mean is no gimmicks, what I mean is no real rule changes, then they will watch. So I think the XFL can succeed. How much it can succeed, I don't know. Will it be a true competitor to the NFL? Hard to say. We'll have to know. We'll know once they develop a little bit. We'll know once they get more teams, once they get more players. The real test will be the players. The real test will be the quality of the players. Will they be able to support players financially enough to take them away from NFL rosters? I'd be surprised. I would be surprised. But the rosters aren't as big. There's only 40 players per roster. So teams don't have to get too deep in the players that they bring in, which is good, which is really good for a league this size. You don't want to try and have rosters of 55 people like the NFL. It's difficult. It's already going to be difficult to bring 40 players in, I think. So it's a good number. What I would do if I was Vince McMahon, what I would make sure I did to really attempt to get ratings, do these things, is the first thing I would do is try and find 8 quarterbacks that I thought were polarizing enough and had enough star power that they themselves could, or demanded, not could, but they themselves would demand viewers. People like Colin Kaepernick. People like Robert Griffin III. People like Johnny Manziel. People like Tim Tebow. Go get those players. Go get those players, those type of quarterbacks, specifically quarterbacks, and let them be the leader of these 8 teams. There's only 8 teams. You can find 8 quarterbacks that can drive a narrative. If the first game of the XFL is on we'll just throw something out there. If it's on a Tuesday night in January, and it's Johnny Manziel versus Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow is the quarterback. We'll just say he's the quarterback of the Florida whatevers, and Johnny Manziel is the quarterback of the Las Vegas whatevers. That game will draw. That game itself, a little prediction from me. That game itself will draw better than any Monday Night Football game of that year. That is a prediction from yours truly. Now, you take that same game and you give me 2 quarterbacks who you found off of a Canadian Football League's roster, who I don't know who they are, and the league will crumble. The league will crumble, 100%. If they can get the players, if they can get the face of the franchise, these quarterbacks, this league can do it. And I think it's a perfect time to do it because people are sick and tired of the politics interfering in their game. They're sick and tired of that. And the XFL, if it truly is football, then it will be an outlet for these people in a time where they desperately want one. And by that I mean the offseason. They desperately want something to watch and some football to consume. And if McMahon and these players can deliver that, then I think it'll be perfect. Next story, I'll be watching. Next story, this happened today. I actually made a separate video on this. So if you want to hear me talk about this anymore, then go to my YouTube channel and the video will be up there. Oh man, this story is so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. I can't believe I'm talking about this twice in one day. But here we are. Max Kellerman of ESPN went on First, or he's on First Take. He's one of the co-hosts. He's on First Take. He goes on First Take, And he says to Stephen A. Smith, he says, I feel like I'm telling a really bad old joke. He says that the Cleveland Indians, their mascot, Chief Wahoo, is being changed. The Indians are doing away with it. They're phasing it out. They realize like maybe the red skin, the feather, the crazy smile, maybe that's a little over the top. So they're removing that. And so they got on the topic of course, race and mascots. Everyone's favorite topic, especially during Super Bowl week. Especially during Super Bowl week, this is what I want to hear. This is what I want to talk about. During Super Bowl week, I want to talk about racist mascots. Thank you, ESPN. Thank you. So Max goes out there and says, you know what? Why stop at the Indian? Why stop at Chief Wahoo, man? Why don't we go a little further? Why don't we go to Notre Dame? Why don't we get rid of that damn leprechaun, the drunk, the fighter? It's pissing me off. It's a little offensive. So his hot take is that the Notre Dame Fighting Irish mascot is abrasive, it's offensive, it's racist. It needs to be gone. Now, the argument that he used was, admittedly, now I'm paraphrasing, admittedly 95 to 99% are not offended by this. But there is a possibility that 1%, 3% could be relatively offended by this. Thus, we must get rid of it. Makes sense? No, it actually doesn't make sense. Sorry, class, no questions. That's basically what happened. The argument does not make sense. At all. People that listen to this podcast are, in my opinion, really smart. Critical thinkers. A lot of the topics we talk about here aren't slapstick topics. We're not doing, crazy sound effects during the show. We're not a shock jock. We talk about real societal issues. We talk about stuff that goes on in pop culture, and we break it down on a critical thinking level, right? So I don't have to. I feel like you all know this is dumb. I feel like you all understand why it's dumb. But unfortunately, this is what's happening in the nation. This is what's happening in sports. This is what's happening in the media. Is they're taking these topics that are not controversial, that are not offensive, that are not divisive, but they are making them that. They are making them controversial. They're making them offensive. They're making them divide. Why? Why is my question. During Super Bowl week, you don't have to do this. You don't have to attempt to be this hot take machine, this hot take factory. You don't have to do that, right? But they do every day. And I think, and if you read the comments, you read the reviews, you read kind of the reception, it's more of why are we talking about this versus a person picking a side, which is what they want. They want to polarize, they want to divide and create conversation. That's the whole point of a hot take, right? LeBron's better than Jordan. Okay, well, half the people are going to take LeBron, half the people are going to take Jordan, and we're going to have a conversation. That barbershop mentality. That's what these shows are created in. These shows are created in the idea of, you know what's fun? What's fun is sitting there with your friends for 30 minutes or an hour and debating over sports. It is something that everybody loves. I love it. I love having conversations with my friends about who's better, Magic Johnson or Julius Erving. Magic Johnson, Larry Bird. Whatever. I like that. Everyone likes that. Every sports fan wants to do that. It's enjoyable. Nobody wants to sit there and every single conversation have one guy bring it back to race, bring it back to people being offended. People, they don't want to do that. Sports are not for that, man. Sports are not for that. Sports are for getting away. Sports are for getting away from reality. Sports are for getting away from the stuff that just drives you crazy during the day. Sports at its very level is very, very simple. Sports at its core is a game that kids play. Little leagues play. Virtually the same game. If you go to a Little League baseball game, player pitch, Little League baseball game, 10 and 11-year-olds. You'll watch the same game that they play in the pros. Yes, it'll be at a much lower level. You won't be seeing people hit 400-foot home runs, but you'll see the game. It's there. It's very similar. They're just playing a glorified version of that kid's game. Why it entertains? Because you can put your pressures, you can put your life away for a minute. And you can care about this team, or these players, or this fight, or this match, whatever, or this horse, whatever you're watching. You know? You have a stressful ass week, just look to Sunday, man, when your local team is playing. And if they win, you win. If they win, you're a winner. If they lose, you're heartbroken with everyone else. And now you have 100,000 people all caring about the same thing. You feel connected. You feel like part of a community. You know it's just a game, but it hurts. And sometimes that kind of feels good. What doesn't feel good is when your game, your sport, your team, whatever, gets sabotaged with reality, gets sabotaged with these issues, gets sabotaged with stuff you don't want to talk about. I don't want to talk about if Notre Dame's mascot is racist. I don't care. No one cares about a leprechaun that's a mascot. Just like no one cares about the Lucky Charms mascot. Just like no one cares about Spartans. Just like no one cares about Crusaders. Just like no one cares about Patriots. Just like no one cares about any of those things. They don't care. You know? Is the Miami Dolphins mascot a true representation of the zoology that a real dolphin has? I don't care. The New Orleans Saints. Do I care that the saint name is based in religion? Based in Catholicism? No, I don't care. At all. Do I want to have that conversation? Hell no. Do I want to have that conversation during Super Bowl week? No. Do I want to have that conversation every single morning on a sports programming show? No. ESPN is in a terrible place. They have gotten away with what made them great. What made them great was sports. What made them great was highlights. What made them great was they had characters like Dan Patrick, Scott Van Pelt, people that could transport you away from your day. And they were just your friends. They were just guys that you could have a beer with, talk sports with, watch a game with. Now their channel is full of social justice warriors who can't go 24 hours without championing for another cause. Less sports and more controversy. Now that is what I'm offended with. That's what I'm offended by. Guys, we are going to wrap up the show. It feels so good, man. It feels so good to be back doing this. It really does. If you didn't listen or watch the show last week, I would highly advise you to, because it's a fresh. Back in the day, I remember one time I was going through the mall with my dad, and that was when the Pepsi challenge was a big thing. When you used to like blind taste test Pepsi and Coke, and I remember that whenever you did it, you took a sip of Coke or whatever, or Pepsi, and then you ate these oyster crackers, these little bitty crackers, and you ate like 3 or 4 of them, and it was to cleanse your palate. And that's what I feel like we're doing right now. We're cleansing our palate, and we're going at something. You know, we're going at something really big, man. We're going at something really big. And I'm excited. I'm really excited for this year. I'm excited to be making videos again, doing podcasts again at a rapid pace. And we're going to try and put out stuff all the time. We're going to try and put out stuff nonstop. And, you know, I'm going to burn it at both ends to give y'all the best content possible. I've said for a long time, no one else can do what we can do. Well, it's time to prove it. I'm excited. So go ahead and join that movement. Join that revolution. Again, the ways to do that: iTunes, is where you can find this podcast. Also, you can find it on Stitcher. You can also find it on Audio Max. So 3 different ways to find the podcast. The YouTube channel, go ahead and go over to James Skrmetta on YouTube. It's easy. There's only one channel in the whole world named that. Find it, subscribe to it, love it, turn notifications on, and watch the hell out of those videos. I promise you they're a lot better than what ESPN is giving you. Promise you that. Guys, we're probably going to do another podcast this week. Today's Wednesday. I would hope we get another one in before the Super Bowl, so be on the lookout for that. We will definitely get videos out before the Super Bowl, so be on the lookout for that as well, guys. Thank you very much for joining me here on the James Skrmetta Show, guys. Until next time, I will see you later.